funding goes to June. There is nothing that has been proposed to be cut. We haven't even talked about fiscal year 26. So fiscal year 26 budget will start with discussions sometime around very late November, where we'll talk about how does it roll over, what does it look like. We're then going to have several budgetary discussions that come up in the early winter. I would encourage all of you to come to those and to learn more about where we are with the budget and what have you. I candidly was really surprised when we started getting letter after letter after letter in the school committee mailbox over the last 24 hours. First of all, thank you. I think it's really important, right? Engagement for students is super important. The music program at Pembroke High School and Pembroke Community Middle School is something that we are very, very proud of, right? I don't think anyone in this room, I can tell from the various parents out there, I see a lot of former graduates from Pembroke High School here. We are all very, very proud of this program. I'm asking everyone to take a breath for a second. You know, we're gonna have a discussion tonight about the letter. I'm happy to make this an agenda item on a future meeting so that we can all be prepared and have a reasonable discussion about where we are and what happened. But I can tell you that nothing has been discussed about cutting anything with the music program. I was actually shocked to hear it. So hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of insight, a little bit of information. And again, I would expect, we can add this to a November or even an early December meeting to have an actual discussion about it. And it actually tees up nicely as we go into the budget and into the budget discussion. So thank you. So adjustments to the agenda. Communications.
So I think you wanted to just talk about the meeting that you know.
Yeah, I just didn't take it. So a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, I heard like third, fourth hand about a couple of things with school safety, and I went to reach out to public safety about it. And what I quickly realized is we need to shore up some of the protocols with our communication process, especially as it relates to school safety, right? I can guarantee you the Pembroke police are all over this. I have no concerns about safety within our buildings or within our district. But I think we always have to evaluate our protocols and our communication strategies. And on something this important and this critical, we need to make sure that we all know exactly what those are. So I put in a request through the town manager to meet with the chief of police, with the chair of the board of selectmen, myself, the superintendent, him, if you thought it was apropos or appropriate to bring the fire chief also, just to have a conversation about what are our protocols, what are our strategies, how is it that we can be effective and communicate. I, as the school committee chair, the superintendent, know exactly who we call, who we reach out to, off hours, regular hours, sort of that type of thing. That meeting is set for Thursday. That meeting is set for Thursday amongst this group to sort of have that conversation. So I wanted you all to be aware of it. I want anyone to be surprised by it. And I wanted you to be aware of why I asked for the meeting. So any questions?
Can we attend that meeting? Or should it be?
It's not a public meeting.
Oh, okay, got it.
Any other questions?
I had asked at some point for there to be kind of like give us.
Yep, so we talked about doing an executive session on school safety. We do have our school resource officer will be transitioning on November 3rd from Officer Kirby to Officer Simmons. So I think that'll be a nice opportunity for us to meet and talk.
I also think the outcome of the strategies would be good for you guys. I completely
Did you
agree.
say we'll have an executive
Yeah,
about
yes.
school safety? Yep.
Anything with school safety would be done in executive session. Yeah.
In the meeting that you're having is not open to the public, right?
No, it's not open
just
to the
people
public.
you mentioned.
It's an administrative meeting to kind of figure out what the protocols are. So, yes. Okay, so student letter regarding low enrollment in music offerings at Pembroke High School. Katrina, since the letter went to you, I'm just going to ask you to kind of talk through what was there, and then I'm happy to have the superintendent comment.
Okay, well, I received a letter at Pembroke Celebrates. Did we want to have the student read it or no?
I don't know that we have to. It's up to
Okay.
you. Would you like the student to read it?
I don't know. I mean,
So it's part of the record.
No, he doesn't want
Yeah.
to read it. Okay, great. Just
I was gonna say,
checking.
does the student
Okay.
want to read it?
So I'll just, a student reached out and handed me a letter at Pembroke Celebrates, and so I sent it along to the school committee to make sure that it was addressed to the school committee. Well, it said to whom it may concern, but it was written school committee on the envelope, and so I scanned it and sent it to all of the other school committee members. And it really just talked about how band and particularly marching band enrollment has been at an all-time low. Marching band enrollment is smaller than it was years prior, as well as, getting smaller each year, seems like. And I think there was a concern, obviously, with how much this program has benefited that student as well as the community as a whole with the decreasing enrollment. It also talked about how the Pathways program could be the potential reason for that decrease in enrollment, and there was an ask for the school committee to investigate and try to come to a solution based on that. Let's see what else. I think, it talked about how it's presented for 8th graders and it being a young age to kind of decide the trajectory of whether or not you're going to go along the Pathway program or whether or not you're going to choose to stay in marching band or do chorus and things like that. So that was discussed. And then it was also talked about just like the effectiveness of whether or not the Pathways program is really kind of replacing vocational education, or if it really gives kids a leg up when they go to college or if they go to college. But I thought it was great in terms of advocacy from a student to see their voice and hearing what they're seeing at a student level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just before I ask for your questions, the student who wrote it, are you here?
Yes.
First, I just want to say thank you, right? You did something that a lot of folks won't do, right? As opposed to sitting on the sidelines, you put your thoughts down on paper, you sought out an elected official, and you said, you work for me, and I have a question. So kudos to you, honestly. Like, I really just want to commend you for doing that, taking the time, and it takes courage. So thank you for doing that. I just want to open up. Do you guys have any, you all received a copy of the letter. I think we've all had a chance to read through the letter. Again, this wasn't meant to be an in-depth discussion tonight because I do think, in fairness, the student asked us to investigate some things, and I think we should do that, both as an administration and as a committee. But do you guys have any questions or anything?
So is this letter going to be made available for others to be able to see now that it's part of the public record?
So it's a matter of public record.
Anybody could request a copy.
Everybody can request a
So
copy.
anybody can request
Yeah.
a copy, and we can forward it to whomever would like to see a copy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Great, and I just want to say also, what an incredibly articulate young man he is, and I'm just really impressed by, he's a young kid writing a letter to the school, to somebody in the school committee trying to make a change at such a young age, and I'm really, really impressed by it, and great job.
Other thoughts, comments? Okay.
Just as an aside, I have been invited to the PAPA meeting on October 8th, so I'll be there to answer questions for folks as well. I know that you all were addressing Sarah while I was grabbing a Chromebook for Allison, but Sarah did send me a request for some information in regards to enrollment. I've shared that with her. I will share that with each of you as well. It just talks about, for the past 11 years, what the enrollment in chorus, band, and orchestra have been. As a function of our overall enrollment. We are not strangers to the idea that the enrollment at Pembroke High School in 2014 was 1,080 students. It is now 680 students. So there is a decline in enrollment, which means there's fewer kids filling seats in all kinds of courses. We've talked a lot at this table about the level of student choice that we offer here. I think last year we had a heated conversation about student choice when it comes to languages, but I anticipate more of those conversations happening because I think we all want to preserve the level of student choice, but at some point the enrollment is going to be a driver in making some choices. So
That does not mean.
I'm not saying band.
God.
No.
I just told these people.
I know. No, but I think you all have done such a nice job of increasing the offerings at Pembroke High School, that there are so many choices. There are 7 periods in a day. Students make choices. They vote with their feet.
Right.
Every single course is listed in the program of studies. No course has been removed from the program of studies. Every single elective is still in there. If kids want to elect to take it, we run it. So if kids are not choosing it, that's when we stop running things. So
I just wanted to be clear for everyone out there before you all had a heart attack.
Can I just mention, I know I've asked the question and you answered it, but for people who don't know the situation with Latin, just to kind of give the fact that a teacher resigned.
So you are not on the agenda.
Well,
Just kidding.
so
in
course offerings, and so that was
correct.
something
So
that
Latin was part of our program of studies, continues to be part of our program of studies. We had a vacancy in our Latin program that came about towards the end of the summer. We were unable to fill that position. The administration and the guidance staff at Pembroke High School has worked with those students that selected Latin courses to either get them into an online class or to offer them to take French or Spanish. But we did not eliminate Latin. Latin will continue to be in the program of studies. Students will be able to elect that for next year. And, obviously, the spring is more of a traditional hiring time for education. So we'll post the Latin position again in the spring and hope to find a successful candidate.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on the student letter? Katrina, thank you for bringing it forward. Did you have a?
I think just when we look at our investigation, I think looking at that, I know one of the pieces was brought up the presentation for 8th graders, so I think having that be a part of our
Yeah, I agree.
investigation.
Yeah. What I'd like us to make sure is that each point that the young man raised, that we're able to.
Yeah.
And
So
we are
come
going to
back
have
and-
this as an agenda item on our
Yeah,
upcoming.
yeah. Yep.
Perfect.
I would target November, because I think we're gonna have to add a second meeting in November anyway. We'll talk about that later.
Right,
Okay.
so we had talked about a pathways update being an agenda item already, so I would
Right.
just anticipate
Yeah,
adding on to that
we'll,
topic.
yep, I think that makes a lot of sense. Other questions, thoughts? Okay. So Sue, you raised this under, and I put it under communications because MASC is always sending committees, different pieces of correspondence and what have you. The MASC, for those of you out there, is the Mass Association of School Committees. There is a conference coming up. Do you just want to talk a bit about the delegates and some of the
Sure, so
things we're asking for?
every year, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees gets together and they vote on resolutions that they want to put forward and advocate for, right? So, each of the districts assigns a representative to vote on behalf of the school committee of that district. And, I think it's important that Pembroke be represented. We have 3 committee members going this year, which I think is great. And I think we should assign, I would love to see us assign somebody to be the delegate. And then we also need to discuss, like, if we do decide to do that, how we determine the resolutions. Should we vote on the resolutions as a committee, like how we want to vote at the,
When is the conference?
it's in November.
So I just
Right
missed
after
it.
the election.
So we would have to do this
At your second
at
meeting.
our second meeting.
So I included in your
I
packet
saw those.
just what the resolutions were. There are obviously some that overlap with some topics we've discussed here at the committee level. There's also some that you all have never discussed at the committee level. So if that's the direction you want to move in, I would say that probably the bulk of your meeting on the 22nd is going to be devoted to working through these resolutions, which,
That's tough.
right.
So let me ask the committee, do you want to select a delegate, and can it only be one?
You need
only be
one,
one.
you
It is
need
not
an
what I thought,
alternate.
yeah. And an alternate. So does the committee want to select a delegate?
If we
Yes.
can agree to what we would vote on, absolutely.
Okay,
I think our
I-
voice would be, but I do think that this is gonna
No,
we're not gonna agree to this. Like, I think what some people, like, I think there's a lot of things on here that I don't know how we would.
Okay, that's okay. So let's just, so what I'm hearing you say is yes, you think we should have a delegate, David?
I think we should, and kind of following up on Allison, I'd almost, if we have a delegate, have someone kind of break this down a little into what I would kind of like, English, for lack of a better term, because it's all whereas, therefore, whereas,
Yeah.
therefore. If someone basically says resolution 1 involves
Is
this,
this, yep.
resolution 2 is this, as opposed to, 6 pages of mumbo jumbo that, we can't really cut through. That's strictly my opinion.
I have a suggestion if we get to the delegate piece. I have a suggestion that I'm going to throw out for the committee to consider, but Katrina, your thoughts?
Yes.
And Sue, you said yes. I also think we should have a voting delegate. So before we select the delegate, what I'd like to do is have an informal working group for that is made up of 2 of the 3 members that are going to attend. We can't do 3 because then you have a quorum. Is that right? We can't do 3 in a
Your
working
attorney's
group?
here, so.
We can't do 3 in a working group? Is that right? It would be a quorum, right. So as a result, I would recommend 2 people, the delegate and the alternate, get together and try and at least come up with recommendations for the committee. And to your point, what does it mean, right? And candidly, I think it would be just helpful. It will streamline, the process a bit. We can't afford to spend the entire next meeting doing only this, right? We have a lot of work to do. And I think it's, we have firm agreement here, and then where we don't have agreement, I think maybe those are the things we as a committee discuss, take a vote of the committee, right? And then the will of the committee will prevail, and the expectation would be that the voting delegate would vote the will of the committee.
Yeah.
Is that reasonable?
Is that the way, is that how that works with how the delegates? Okay.
Yes.
It should be.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
yeah, they just,
Jason Frazier, the president, this
Yeah.
year sent out an email, I don't know if you saw
Yeah.
it, but suggesting that we discuss just that, like how we want to vote. You can go and just send a delegate and let them vote on behalf of the committee
well, that's what I was
without,
wondering what most.
or you can do it the other way, but as a committee, you're supposed to decide.
Yeah.
And I agree with the will of the committee, that's.
Okay. So the question then becomes, who's going to the conference? Let me ask you that.
I am.
You are? Okay, so clearly David and I are not going to be the delegate.
Could still go. I had fun last year.
I've been. I have been in the
I
past.
actually would like to nominate Allison as a delegate because she is like, first, there's David doing the legislative piece and Allison next to him, so I think she would be great. I mean, if you want it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to do it.
I'll second the nomination. Is there any other nominations that we want to put out there for the delegate?
I don't know. I mean, if-
I emailed about potentially
Katrina
being the
wants to do
delegate,
it.
but I don't want to nominate myself. I don't know.
Okay, well, that's okay. I'll nominate you,
Can we
Katrina.
do an alternate?
No, we
Yeah,
we
well,
can,
we'll do it.
we can,
That's-
but, so, hold on a second, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if Katrina wants to do it, I'd be happy to be the alternate. If she would like to be, I mean, it's up to the table what they want to do, but I would be okay with that.
So interestingly, I thought maybe Sue, given she brought it forward, was pretty passionate about the thing, might be a good alternate too.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to work with whoever the alternate is I mean, I've, a lot of these carried over from last year. Almost all of them are the same that were on last year. I mean, I didn't vote last year because I didn't know what I was doing or what was going on because that was
Well,
my first year. But
It's interesting. I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you, given it's your first year, right? And I think you made actually, it's a very good point. Would you be willing to attend with your colleagues, kind of learn, understand it, with that, like, hey, you could be the delegate as we go into this next year? I do think providing feedback of some sort, of what's working, how's everything going, that type of thing, as you go through the process is going to be pretty important. And obviously, you'll get to participate in voting here on anything that
well, and this is also
you
just
guys
one
couldn't.
small part.
I
of
understand. I know,
conference.
I totally understand that, but you'll get to vote here, Katrina, on anything that's that these guys can't agree on.
Sure. That works.
Are you sure?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
So then, all those in favor of Allison being our voting delegate at the MASC conference, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Natalie's not here. I don't know what to do.
Natalie's not feeling well.
Okay, so
I'm writing it down.
That's right. So I would like to nominate Sue Bollinger as our alternate.
Second.
Sorry.
So that's right, seconded by David. Are there any other nominations? So hearing none, all those in favor of Sue being the alternate, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Stand in, Natalie. So so what I would ask then Sue and Allison to do between now and our next meeting, get together, go through. If you agree, that's awesome. The things you don't agree with, let's just bring them back. Well, I'd like to time box this a little bit.
Well, I think we should still,
Yeah.
even if we agree, we should still bring it.
No, bring it forward,
Yeah.
but we agree, this is what it says, this is what it meant. What I'm trying to do is prevent this from being, a
100%.
3-hour
Envisioning something like
thing.
town meeting, like we have like, the
Yeah.
advisory says yes, select
Oh,
board
yeah.
says
Do
yes,
it-
maybe we
what's
could do
it
something like
called?
that.
Yeah, well, even
Slate,
something-
a slate vote?
A slate vote.
Well, no,
Where's
but
my
if-
thing?
If they said something like a yes vote would mean this, a
Right.
no vote means
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
A no vote means everything stays the same.
But let me ask you a question. So working group, is that a public meeting or is that just a working group?
It's just a
Now, like, get
working,
together and-
it's just a working group, right?
If it's going to be making recommendations back to the full committee, if it's a truly a working group, it's not something, it's going back with recommendations.
All right, then it'll be an open meeting, because you're going to bring recommendations back, right? No, thank you. I just want to be sure.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to form a full subcommittee to do this. That's why I'm calling it a working group, but it almost doesn't matter. It sounds like at this point. Okay, all right, that's fine. So then it would be a public meeting, so we would post it, you're all welcome to come, and then, we'll come back. Anything else on MASC? So bills have been circulated. We were sent minutes in our packet from September 3rd, so I will entertain a motion to accept the September 3rd, 2024 meeting minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katrina, seconded by David.
So you all, a few
just
of
wanna
you
check
sent
something real
edits
quick.
to Natalie. She made the corrections that she received in email.
Any other amendments or suggested edits to the minutes?
I sent mine.
So hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Okay, so discussion of changes in Title IX regulations. I'd like to introduce Attorney Joe Emerson. He's legal counsel on behalf of the school committee. Take it away, Joe.
Sure. So I was asked to look over the recommendations that the MASC, same as the MASC, being made recommendations as to policies to be added to your policy manual as a school district. They deal with the updates on Title IX. They also deal with just the updates that is the Massachusetts law when it comes to discrimination and harassment. So they gave a number of them. I don't want to review each one of them individually, but I can tell you the task which I understand that I was asked was which ones would be appropriate and which ones would not be either necessary or not so much inappropriate. It's just the easiest way to say it, but there are a number of things that they present that are simply redundant, either redundant to themselves or redundant. So they did label these each as under their file A, so it's the A series in the policy manual. And to begin, the first that they recommended was one, file AC, which is a non-discrimination policy for harassment and retaliation. This one has, from their original recommended policies, is just the addition of the word sex stereotypes and sex characteristics as areas not to be, for which there should be discrimination or harassment. The other key piece throughout all of it, actually, those words are added also in ACR, as well as changing in very often throughout the word discrimination to harassment. We want to make sure that that's clear. Those ACR, even ACA, which has non-discrimination on the basis of sex, which again has reworded with additions again, with the word sex stereotype, sex characteristics from what they had originally presented, and the notice of non-discrimination and related Title IX information. Okay. That those again, I have no issue with those being included in the policy. They are consistent with both the Mass General laws when it comes to discrimination, which is as strict, if not more strict, than actually Title IX. And therefore, those policies are probably non-issue as far as I can see.
Can you repeat
My opinion.
which one's AC?
AC, ACA, AC,
ACR.
ACR, excuse me, I put it back on AC. ACA, and the AC was AC-R, which is like for ACA. And then also there's ACGA, which is regarding civil rights grievance procedure. That also is simply consistent with using discrimination in those situations as opposed to harassment, and is again consistent with both Title IX and civil rights laws under Title VII and Title VI of federal law. So those pieces I had no concern with and no issues with as far as being consistent with what you have. The ones that are, I found to be redundant to the point of just great confusion. When you had that much redundancy, you get to that point where things can be misinterpreted because it said one way in one document and another in another. It comes out of the way. And those were files ACGB and ACA-R. So I mentioned the ACA, and then there's ACA-R. There's no legal citation that's even cited in that policy, that ACA-R. To me, policy should always be based on statute, whether it be local or federal, and therefore that would be a recommendation piece. Everything that's in there is what's covered in the policy under ACA. So there didn't seem to be anything, in my opinion, to do with ACA. I understand the policy subcommittee is going to be looking at these in more detail, so I didn't know if you had any other specific questions on those.
Can you repeat the first one, because I don't see that one listed as one of those. So ACGE or ACGB?
GB.
GB, I heard E. Okay, thank you, that one is there. Okay.
It may have been when my microphone.
Yeah, thank you. So those ones are just redundant.
The ACGB was redundant, I consider to be redundant, and ACAR.
Yes.
ACAR was even more so, was more of a sort of a statement. As I mentioned, it doesn't have any citation. When you look at all the policies that they put out, there's always a reference at the end of each of them in which they say you still need the references.
Yeah.
Title VI, Title VII, Title IX, Mass General Laws, 71B, Section 1, et cetera, and cross-references to other policies that you have that have been adapted or adopted from the recommended policies from MASC in general. The ACAR had none of those. It's just kind of paraphrasing, if you will, my opinion, of ACA. So it didn't seem to have to serve any particular purpose. Then, no.
Did you mention ACAB?
Oh, no, I didn't. That's on the bottom of the pile. Thank you. This one is, oh, yes, this one was fine because this one has those references I mentioned and also include the number of the definitions. It's entitled, it's ACAB. The title actually is Sexual and Sex-Based Harassment and Retaliation. It does have that consistency that you're looking for with the definitions that are coming from the statutes that are referenced in there, and one of which, again, is an important reference, I believe, is chapter of Mass General Law, chapter 1, section 3A, which is the Massachusetts non-discrimination statute. In that particular section, the definitions as to what are those areas, how those classifications or categories of discrimination are defined. So that is very consistent. There's also referencing in there as well to chapter 119, section 51A for reporting sexual violence, etc.
Questions for Joe?
So, Title IX is still being, they haven't decided federally, well, that they've decided, but like it's going to be discussed further.
Yes.
And so we don't know yet if it's, you know, moving, there's a possibility that it might not come
Right.
together as is.
Right, there's the Kansas case, which decided back in July of this year, which put a stoppage on that for the districts that were involved in that and others which had any participants in those particular groups, mothers, and that, in any event, that particular decision has been appealed. That's going through the process now to end up before the United States Supreme Court. And we'll see how that determination goes into the overall application of Title IX. At the same time, with these particular policies, there's still that obligation as to Massachusetts itself isn't a states, those cities that's involved in that case, Kansas case, Title IX is still applicable. And as I mentioned before, one of the key pieces in this whole process is that the Massachusetts laws, I mentioned Chapter 151B, has a lot of what's already in or was added to Title IX or already in our statute in Massachusetts. So we still have an obligation to comply with the Massachusetts law. The issue that has come up with the Kansas case isn't so much whether or not you comply with Title IX, it is if you comply with Title IX, does the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, have the authority to enforce it, i.e. withhold money from that particular district or not, which is their avenue of enforcement. And right now, that's what's at issue as to whether or not a Title IX can prevent the federal government through the Department of Education from
So,
providing funding to those.
question about that specifically.
Sure.
I was told, and I don't know if this is true, so I'm hoping you can let me know.
It's
The
a
Department-
changing world, so I'll
It
say,
is,
yeah, so if I don't know
So-
the answer, I'll let you know, and then I'll find it.
I was told that since 1972, they have never withheld federal funds to
That's
any
my understanding as well. It's a threat that is there, whether it has actually been utilized. It's a mechanism for enforcement.
So if we did a wait and see, and just waited to see how this all shakes out, before changing our policies, would that be like a bad thing, knowing that this has never been, something where they've withheld funds?
It would be sort of an act, I would, trying to find the right wording for this. You have an obligation to comply with the laws that are in place.
Of course.
It is the law that's in place at this point in time.
Even with the
To-
Moms of Liberty? students
Correct.
that are
It
in
is,
school?
again, it becomes, what those challenges have done, and through the Moms for Liberty, et cetera, and the other group whose name escapes me,
Alliance for Freedom.
the Alliance, something like that. What the court has said is that if they are found to be not in compliance with the Title IX requirements, an individual in a school district with Moms for Liberty, et cetera, or in Kansas and the others, is that the Department of Education hold them accountable for failure to comply. It's not the compliance that's the issue, it's whether or not somebody fails to comply, whether or not they're going to be able to hold that district accountable for it. So it's not the statute itself, it's the enforcement of that, again, the withholding of funding, et cetera, that would become the issue. Again, Massachusetts already has a lot of the laws, the provisions in place in similar definitions, and in some cases, some may argue even more stringent definitions than what Title IX has.
So I actually have a follow-up question.
Sure.
And it's a really important distinction, and I'm still not clear. So I read the case, the
Mhm.
Kansas case, and I read the judge's finding And it seemed pretty clear when I read it, and I'm just, God knows I don't play a lawyer on TV.
Sure.
Right? I don't, have the qualifications to make the determination, but the way I read it is, if you were a member of that group,
Mm-hmm.
and your student was in the district, that the district could not be held accountable to the new federal regulation, you would default to the original Title IX regulation before the Biden-Harris administration made these changes.
And to
Is
take that a step,
not-
that's, yes, and take it a step further, it's the school.
So that's what.
So it's by
that was my
individual
question.
school,
So it
yes.
is by school?
Yeah.
Okay. So then my next question is the policies that you stated, and this was the second part of what you just got to, Joe, AC, ACA, AC-R. Does the language that we currently have in there comply to the Massachusetts law today?
I was just going to say, I don't believe you have the A series. I don't think you have these in your A series.
You don't
Well,
have
let me rephrase, because I was thinking this one.
And they do
back to
comply
back.
with the Massachusetts law.
No, those do, but
Yeah.
we have discrimination, sexual discrimination policies in the state.
So we don't have a standalone non-discrimination policy, which is what the recommendation is and the
Yes.
reasoning behind
It's all
AC.
part of
It's
the policy.
embedded in a couple of our other policies. We do not have a standalone
Okay.
non-discrimination
Mike,
policy.
so then let me rephrase the question. The language that we have, does that currently comply to the existing Massachusetts legislation? Do you know?
The ones, what you have in
Yes.
place, I believe so. I didn't dig into those as I did with
So-
these particular ones.
If,
So my understanding is,
Sure.
is our GDAA, which is our current one that we've recently done, we would need to change, and this is where my word discrimination to harassment. Right? Isn't that what some of this is?
Yes.
Sexual
It's a-
discrimination is sex.
Harassment.
The other way. The reverse.
And it's the reverse, actually. I think I misspoke it,
Yeah.
misspoke
The
earlier
reverse.
myself.
It's supposed to be.
I think it's discrimination, yeah.
So-
I went from,
The term harassment is discrimination? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my understanding is that our GBAA would need to be
updated.
updated, but that's, and then we have standalone policies that MESC has suggested.
Which they recommended, yeah.
And then my understanding from policy at the presentation is that there's also, we would need the pregnant students, the JIE, pregnant students.
Which used to exist here.
we did like
Yes.
that.
So that's my understanding, is that this also now needs to be a standalone policy.
Yes.
So,
That's at least the understanding that I have based on.
so my follow-up question, my follow-up is, if the language we have is sufficient, barring harassment, discrimination, whatever.
So it's not. We don't have a civil rights.
Correct.
Grievance, yeah,
We
we,
don't have, some of these things we don't have, we should have.
Correct.
Regardless of whether or not the Title IX changed.
For example, the civil rights is a good example of that, because that's beyond Title
If we
IX.
went back and we got rid of the final rule, for example, and it was just the 1972, or the,
Because
with
we're
the
here for
amendment,
the
We would still
Massachusetts
need
law.
we would still need it. is what
You
you're
would still
saying.
need it, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And just to clarify, we also have to follow the final rule because it's currently the rule.
Yes and no.
Well, yeah.
No, the answer
Just
to that
clarifying,
question is
yeah,
yes
I
and
mean-
Yeah, it, lawyers like to say it can depend, right? It's without, let me back up. You have the authority to not adopt any of these policies if you choose not to.
What's the risk?
That's the point. That comes into, and that's, as Sue was pointing out, that becomes the question as to what is that risk going forward if you fail to have that in place. The risk is more than, my opinion, can be more than just the withholding of funding from the federal government. You're also you could run into situations in which people are saying, we have these particular rights that are protected under our statute, Massachusetts, as well as Title IX.
So lawsuits?
And lawsuits that could impend from there. It also gives you that authority to be able to, when you turn to take any particular action for someone who has engaged in some of the prohibited behavior, to be able to say, this is the behavior, because by definition, you have that behavior is defined as to what you have engaged in, and therefore be able to back that up, that you have something in place, as opposed to sort of just doing it because you feel that it's a judgment call.
So I want to be a little careful here, right? So, and it's interesting, right? You started to use a phrase, and I'm going to use the phrase, and what I think it is going to be, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, they will do that work. Okay? The reality is we can do nothing on an act of defiance to the law and or to the federal regulation. I said we all around this table look at this body as on the chair will comply with the law, because we have to comply with the law, right? However, the Title IX rule, in my view, is also very gray because of all of these challenges and everything else that happened. We have to comply with the existing Massachusetts law, I think for some of the legal reasons that the attorney just gave. How we do it is entirely up to us, right? So what the language looks like, how we put it forth, and keeping in mind, I don't think anyone on this table is against protecting all of our kids from sexual harassment and discrimination of any kind, by the way. That means all of our kids from that. So I do think we ultimately have to comply with the law. But one of the pieces that, because again, there's a risk reward component to this, I think, that we're sort of talking about. The Supreme Court came out last year and basically said regulatory authorities do not have legislative power and cannot enforce legislation in the regulatory, oversimplifying, but in the regulatory capacity, which is hence the, can you actually withhold funding, or can only Congress do that? I would put forward that the court has legislated that, and there's no precedent. I think so will the attorneys that are going to argue this case. But I think it's less about the Title IX component and more about the Massachusetts law component that our policies ultimately have to conform with. And I think that should be our primary concern, and less on the Title IX component. That's just my opinion.
I think we need to comply with both.
I happen to know of parents in this district who are members of Moms for Liberty, Moms of Liberty, whatever it is. And I know that, I'm told, so correct me if I'm wrong, but with proof of membership, then that's all we need, right?
Proof of membership, yes, and it'd be for that school.
For that school.
Where
So-
those children are attending.
And I'll say it's only for Pembroke High School. I don't know about the elementary or middle school, but I do know for Pembroke High School of the couple parents that it could provide proof of membership. So with that being said, I think until it's really the U.S. Supreme Court shakes it out and figures out what is going to, because like you said, I read the opinion as well, and it seemed pretty clear that it was thought that this just couldn't work. This was, stepping on people's rights, along the way. So I kind of feel like, yes, we definitely have to comply with Massachusetts law. And, I think we should take a look at the policies and make sure that we are doing so. But I don't think we should change them to comply with Title IX law, the new final rule Title IX law, just yet. I think we should hold off on that until
I think that we're splitting hairs a little bit. So the thing that I want to be careful of, so I think it's good that we're having the discussion, because ultimately our policy subcommittee will take this back. They will have heard the discussion around this table. They will have at least an idea of the committee is split on a piece of this, and there's no doubt. But I think in complying with the Massachusetts law, about 90% of what is in the Title IX piece is still going to be in the policy, right? And I think we just need to be cognizant of that, right? So I think at the end of the day, policy sub should take this back, should go through, should hear sort of what we've had to say, and make a determination, and then we can debate it when those policies come up. But David, I haven't heard much from you. Did you want to add anything?
I'll be honest with you, I honestly want to do more research on this. Had a lot going on, started reading the opinions, and sat back and I said, you know what, this is literally sit somewhere in a quiet moment and dig it, so.
that's fair.
Refrain from comment.
I think that's completely fair. So,
Wait, I had a couple things, if I can.
of course.
So I'm just flipping through a couple of the ones, and I'm looking at like the legal references, because that's a lot of times, and at
Right.
least the first two I've gone through don't show final rule as one of the legal references. I've done the AC ones. So has Pembroke High School or have we been notified? I don't know, is it part of a lawsuit? Like, I don't know what the right term is.
No, Pembroke High School isn't listed in the addendum to that case. I
yet,
don't,
no.
I think
Not to
at
my
some
knowledge. I
point,
haven't- I
at
didn't
some
check
point,
it
there
today.
was
So
a
we haven't been
deadline by
notified.
which you had to notify, but I
And
think
that's
it's
been
rolling at
extended
this
and
point, right?
extended, so it's become a more of a
So as
rolling
of
one.
today, we haven't been notified.
No.
I will ask the
On
parents
that.
to make sure that Erin has a copy of the membership, just so that we're all on the same page.
Okay, and then,
Hold on, because
Okay,
your
yeah.
notification question is important. Is that sufficient to comply with,
Well,
the finding?
keep in mind, and this may be a difference of opinion that you've come to, Patrick, but the ruling, the injunction that was issued by Kansas, in the Kansas case, only prohibits the Department of Education from enforcing the Title IX regulations. It doesn't stop the Title IX regulations.
Fair, but I think
the enforcement of it. So that's where you come into, again, that becomes what's the legal risk that you have, as well as I mentioned, just on the ground floor, if you will, as to the application of your policies.
Wasn't
And
it a
whether or not
stated-
somebody's going to look and say, you didn't include this policy, this is part of your policy, I was discriminated in this particular way, and you didn't have any way to be able to enforce it to protect me. There are, and again, Massachusetts, you mentioned that Massachusetts is about 90% of Title IX. I'd almost flip it the other way.
Yeah, fair enough. That may be very
I think
fair.
Title IX is 90% of what
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts is far more direct in its protections.
Go ahead, Allison.
so
sorry.
I guess my question as policy, on the policy subcommittee, what I'm hearing around the table is if any of the policies, and I've only gone through 3 of them, and they've not included final rule. So if the subcommittee reviews JIE, which I can right off the bat see it says final rule on it, from what we had been given at the August meeting, the July subcommittee meeting. I have not done all the AC new ones that the 5 that Joe mentioned.
Right.
But if so far 3 of them do not show final rule, so to me, from what I'm hearing, those are ones that would be worth our time investigating,
Right, yeah.
because it sounds like around the table that we're worried about the final rule being the final rule. Am I understanding?
I think that's right, too. Yes.
Okay, so you guys can keep asking questions. I'm gonna check the last ones.
I have no further questions.
Can we be provided with a list of the schools once parents tell us that they're part of Moms for
That's a
Liberty?
great question. Yes.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think, yeah, although I wouldn't put it in the policy because that's going to change.
Oh, certainly
When the
not,
court
yeah.
changes, when the case is fully adjudicated, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Okay.
Okay, so don't quote me, but 99% sure the 5 that he quoted do
Yeah,
not
we'll
show.
look at them.
Do not
I
say
don't believe they
final
do either, yeah.
on them. So question,
When there's a reference to Title IX, it is the Title IX
the
of
old
the Acts of
one. It doesn't say
1972.
final rule. So
Oh, I'm sorry, that one.
the pregnant student ones definitely does.
But we
We used to
had,
have
we
this.
had JIE,
So-
so I would go back
Right.
to the version that we had.
Okay,
that
I'd like to see the
existed.
differences because I'd be
Yeah.
curious.
But we'll do all of that in
Because
policy.
I feel like we should definitely have a pregnant student policy, especially in light
Yes.
of some of the
So
things
we'll
that I'm
do all of
reading
that in
on that.
policy.
Okay,
Yep.
so that makes sense.
And we have to make sure they conform to the existing Massachusetts law.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Correct. No, that's
At
fine.
least this one references final rule and Mass General Law and whatever CRF.
Yep, we will
The
look at
Code
all
of
that.
Federal
Okay.
Regulations.
Okay. I think those were my questions for this part. Yeah,
Good.
okay.
Thank you, Joe.
All
Anything
right,
further?
thank you. No, I have nothing else to add.
I'm just going to ask
Yeah.
that Joe stay for the next piece, the G,
Yeah,
it's just a singular policy.
I was gonna
just
ask you
in
that.
case.
I was hoping you could do.
So I asked for this to be put on the agenda. And David, you actually raised an issue a couple of meetings ago. I had seen on the news, doesn't always give you factual information, but I saw on the news that I think it was Dayton Rehoboth put a policy in place for their school committee that allows their coaches to forfeit a game if there is a biological male playing on an all-female team against females. That has nothing to do with transgender anything, by the way. There are some instances in which the sport is not offered, and you actually have a young man in high school who's playing on a female sports team. Actually happened, there was a field hockey game, and there was a female athlete who was severely injured by a ball that she took to the face as a result. And I would like to request, because this is how we do this work, right? I would request that the policy subcommittee go back and look at JJIB or other related policies and kind of put it up against what Dayton Rehoboth has done and make a recommendation of what may or may not make sense for our district here in Pembroke.
For clarification purposes, just to reiterate what Patrick said, it's not about a male student on a female team. It's just opposite sex. It could go either way.
It could go the other direction as well.
And we currently have a policy, JJIB. There is nothing in our policy that prohibits a coach or a current athlete from forfeiting a contest. There's no listed consequence associated with that. So
But if I may, just one thing, I called the MIAA. I'm fortunate to have a couple of friends over there. And if you forfeit, it does count against your record.
Always.
So,
And
yeah, so you have to
we've
be-
been in instances where there's been racial slurs at basketball games or violence at hockey games, and the coaches have willingly forfeited,
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So
goes-
a
it
couple of
counts against
parents
your
said,
record in all
that's not true.
instances.
If we don't play the game, like it never,
No,
and
in
I
all
said, no,
instances.
it's considered.
It happens a little bit more frequently in wrestling when you have some of the lower weight classes. In some school districts, there's females that are on the team, and we've had male athletes that have chosen to not wrestle a female athlete, so they're forfeiting the match. But there's no consequence. I don't want people to walk away from tonight thinking that currently we have a consequence if that decision is made.
So an individual student, if they were like on, I don't know, the field hockey team, can choose to not participate and not have any repercussions?
To me, this is just a
bigger
student
thing,
safety thing.
Yeah.
And I just want to make sure, especially with our female athletes, that when they get to play, they are protected. And that if we may not need to change anything. Let me be super clear about that. But I'd like us to look at it, right? And I want to make absolutely certain that our female athletes are afforded every protection out there to make sure that candidly they don't get injured just playing a sport.
But we also have to remember Pembroke, I believe, has a male player on the volleyball team. So I feel like we have to be careful too of how we present ourselves
I
because
totally
this
understand
is
that. But we can still have a policy that allows us to make a call. Every sport's different, right? And every sport is completely different.
Sure. As an alternative, there is optional safety equipment that can use during field hockey. Field hockey seems to be the bulk of the concern.
field hockey is
just
the concern,
that ball
yes.
is pretty hard.
Yes.
So there's additional safety equipment. We could talk about in policies of requiring that as opposed to it being
would that be policy or would that be,
it could go in your policy. It would go in the athletic handbook, which is policy, right?
Yeah.
So again, there's a couple ways to look at it.
I think that safety is the most important thing. If a female student doesn't feel safe for any reason, they should be able to, get out of the sport. And I think putting it in a policy might be helpful just to make the students feel safe. They have a policy to go back to that says, look, if for some reason we get a coach that just, decides, oh, you didn't participate in the last game, so I'm not letting you play this one,
Right, I mean, the
look at
Dayton
policy.
Rehoboth policy is specific to the coach. It has nothing to do with
Well, it doesn't it say in here as well about the students?
No
It's
student
about
on the
not
last
being
paragraph.
penalized, right,
About-
which
The last
we don't
paragraph.
have
Yeah,
any of
that's it.
that now, so.
It says it in no student athlete.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's why I think it's like, it would be nice to have both in there.
but do we have the term single-sex team? Like, I'm curious if Rehoboth sorry, I don't know how to say this, have.
So the
are
definition of single-sex teams means it's not offered for both male and female. So volleyball,
Okay.
field hockey.
So that's not like a specific
No.
thing for them?
No, it's an MIA
okay.
term.
Okay, got it.
And is Dayton Rehoboth, I don't know if this plays into it, but a comparable school district?
So it has been one of our
It has been one of
It
the
is.
past schools?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to
I
know.
would say, though, I don't think it does necessarily play into the policy piece, but they are a district like ours, socioeconomically,
Yeah.
sort of everything else. I think these are just things that, look, the environment is changing. It is always changing, right? And when things like this come up, I think it is healthy for us to
Yeah.
take a really good look at our policies and make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect.
Right, what I
all
just
of our
wanted to
kids.
clarify is that in the interim, while this goes to policy sub and comes back as a first read and a second read prior to approval, if there is a coach of a single-sex team that willingly forfeits, there is no current consequence. So I want people to know.
I think
Yeah.
that's
Because,
fair.
I mean, field hockey season's probably going to be over by the time
Yeah,
we get to
yeah,
a second
yeah.
read here.
This is going to be more for
Right.
next year
Right.
than it is, I think, anything else. But I think that's important to note.
Yeah, and I also want to look at other school districts, just, look at multiple policies when we're doing
Put some
that.
stuff together for policy sub.
Awesome, thank you.
If
So-
that's the will of the committee, is for policy sub to look at this.
Yeah,
Yes. Do I
Yes, no.
Need a motion?
Yes.
we can vote on it.
So I'm so moved to have.
Second.
So hold on.
Whoops.
So the motion on the table is to instruct policy sub.
Can I ask Joe a question before we do
Yeah.
that? Do you see is there a legal reason to not add that language to the policy? Like that basically no coach or student athlete would be penalized? Is there any risk to us adding that to our
No.
existing policy?
No. As David pointed out, it doesn't protect you in the league games and
Yeah,
sort of the
we'd- yeah,
standings,
we'd-
but as far as a consequence for the individual student or consequence for the coach
Or
for
as a
having
committee-
chosen not to participate
Correct.
in
Yeah,
that,
that's what I want to make sure. As a
is-
committee, we aren't risking anything by adding this language
no.
to anything. Okay.
So the motion on the table is to instruct the policy subcommittee to review and look at policy JJID and similar policies in order to review for student safety, for student safety
On single-sex teams.
on single-sex teams, yes.
So moved.
So motion by Katrina,
Second.
seconded by David. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, thank you very much.
We're going to see you on the
Thank you.
22nd too. Great.
Yes,
Good to see you, Joe. Take care.
Good to see
Thank
you,
you.
Joe, thank you.
thank you very much.
So next on the agenda, there was going to be a discussion on the school committee goals.
So in your packet, you have the most recent version that we had from September of '23, and then what Natalie did was just pull together what you all had sent. So we got some feedback from a couple of you in regards to goal areas you would like to take a look at. It's not included here, but David did reach out and talk about having some goals around school safety and mental health. So that should be part of your conversation as well. You talked at the last meeting or the one before about potentially having some kind of working group tackle this. I love you all dearly and we spend a ton of time together, but you are mildly all over the place when it comes to goals.
I'd be happy to compile this all into one document
Right, I think
as
that
like another read, because
this isn't a read, right? This
Well,
is
no,
just about
well,
you
as
guys
a-
getting your
yeah.
ideas on paper, and then I thought what you all had discussed was a couple of you getting together
Yeah.
to put together
and I'm happy
like things.
to do that. I don't know if there's any, I don't want to say objections to what has been written, but at least have it all in one cohesive document so that we can then look at it again to see if there's additions, changes. I mean, I can email it out kind of thing, or give it to Aaron to email out. I don't know.
Do you mean like categorize it into
Yeah, because
similar goals?
I think there's a number that kind of,
Well, you
I
get
think that's what the
communication
working
student
group
between
would
a
do,
couple
y-
things.
yeah, they
What's
kind
that?
of,
That's what the working group would do, right?
well,
I
but,
think two of you.
so
two of
can we do that? Like that's,
No,
okay.
you can.
Yeah, you're not making recommendations back to the committee, you're compiling, so it would
Okay.
truly be a working group.
Okay. but it could only be 2.
I volunteer as tribute.
All right, so Katrina and Allison, do you guys want to take this, assemble it into a workable,
Unless you wanted to do
understandable
it.
way?
Did you want to do it?
I'm fine with the two of you if you want.
Okay.
No,
Because
it's
if you want to do it, you're welcome.
a bit of work. Just
If you
remember,
need me to, I will. So you just.
But, I mean, I think I just don't want to do everything if somebody else wants to do something too.
and just remember, let's make sure things are achievable and it's time for.
But I'm happy to sit with you all when you go
Goals,
through it,
that
because
type of thing.
some of the stuff that is in here is not a
thing.
achievable data point that you would be looking at.
That would be helpful.
Are you looking at
'cause
mine?
No, I mean, some of you reference increasing something by 15%, but you
Yeah,
don't even have a
mine.
baseline, so how are you deciding that 15%?
But by the way, the goal may be to get a
Yeah.
baseline,
Right,
right?
right.
I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I
These
think
were
we
just
do
ideas.
a pretty good
No, I
job
get
on
it.
some data, but yeah, I think that's important.
Okay.
So thank you, guys.
So would you like this for our next meeting? Do we have room on the schedule for this on the next meeting?
Probably first meeting in November.
Okay, that
Okay.
gives us a timeline.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I think it'll be also helpful to make sure it's in the purview of the school committee versus not a
100%.
school.
And do we know when that
issue.
November meeting, we'll get to
No,
that.
we're gonna
We'll
get
get
to
to
that.
that.
Sorry. I will
Okay,
not
sounds good.
So next up is my report. Thank you. In my report, you
Trying to
have.
take over the
Yeah,
meeting?
you guys are slow. Is the tech scorecard. So I just want to share with you that this is something that you receive quarterly. It's just kind of like a snapshot in time of what's going on in our tech department. It is Mike Tinker's first time. I didn't have the heart to tell him it's just supposed to be 1 page, so we gave him 2 pages this time because he was really excited. But I do envision something like this being how we track your goals as well, right? So, if you all are going to land in 4 goal areas, that quarterly we're bringing you some sort of scorecard on what's happening in each of those areas.
You're the
So
greatest. Yeah.
I won't grade you because your grade reflects on me. But I think that, this, just in your packet, if you have a question specific to it, I'm happy to make up an answer. I probably don't know it as much as I'm here, but it's just at a glance, so.
I had one thing, I think with the professional development, just knowing that the new IEP is coming in place this year, if that would be part of the staffing professional development. I think it's
This
already.
is just for the tech department.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Well, would there be a tech training on the new IEP system?
So student services trains them on the new tool. It's not, yeah.
So it wouldn't necessarily be in this?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
It's in our overall professional development plan under student services, not under the tech.
Okay, got it.
But is it in the software part, or is that not a software
We
we
already
had to
have
buy?
the software.
No, because we already did it last year.
One thing that I know Fish Tank was mentioned, but I didn't see it in the instructional software.
It's not software.
Oh,
Fish
okay.
Tank is,
It's just a
books.
repository of
Yeah.
books? Okay, got it.
It's books and lessons. So the tech update will be shorter the next time, but equally as lovely.
It was really well done and pretty. I
looks
loved
really
it.
nice.
Almost readable size font.
Sorry for my
Almost.
critical feedback first.
No worries.
Good graphics.
It was
Good graphics,
Not a lot of
like
words.
Canva, yeah.
Next, in your packet is 3 trips for approval. A world language trip to France in February of 2025. A music trip to New York City in April of 2025, and a trip to Quebec City in May of 2025. So the Quebec trip has happened in the past. There have been years where we've done a Paris trip as well, depending on student interest. The music trip in particular, I just want to point out that Gwen heard your feedback the last time in regards to the Disney trip, and the price that is here will not change.
Amazing.
No, that's good. Are these all going to happen, or are they seeking interest still?
So the music one is happening, and I think the Quebec one is happening. They've already done an interest. I believe the Paris one has also already done an interest night. So they're all
So
for
it's
approval.
actually
They're
for
not
approval,
conceptual.
not
they're for
conceptual
approval.
approval. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the World Languages Department trip to France, February 2025, as presented?
So moved.
Second.
So motion made by Katrina, seconded by Allison. All of the chaperones are appropriate. We have all the right ratios.
Yes.
Other questions on this?
I will reiterate again, for folks that weren't a part of the conversation before, the price for the chaperone trip is built into the student cost. So the nurse, the teachers, that is part of the
I have a real
cost.
quick question. This has March date. as when they submitted it? Would the
So-
price for a
Yeah,
whole
the-
year
the-
later?
You all did a conceptual approval
approval.
already for this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the price within, like, hasn't gone? like-
No, the
okay.
prices are as
Okay,
stated in
that just seems like a long time ago. Okay.
They're very prepared.
Other
well in advance.
questions?
She heard all the feedback.
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Can I get a motion to accept the music department trip to New York City, New Jersey in April 2025 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Allison, seconded by Sue. Any questions?
I thought I heard Aaron say, is this being done by the same people that did the Disney trip or no? I
No,
kinda-
it's a different travel company, but she did ask them just to confirm in writing that the price would not change, which she does have, so.
That's,
Thank you, Gwen.
that's Gwen here, thank you.
No, she's not here. She asked
just
if I
saying
needed
it
her
for
to
the
come this
recording.
evening, and I told her no.
No, that's,
And chaperones.
Yep, all of it.
I ask everything. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve the World Languages Department trip to Quebec City in May of 2025 as
So-
presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katrina, seconded by Allison. Other than the standard chaperone question, any other questions?
For clarification, this trip is 7 through 12. We do have the middle school students room with middle schoolers and the high school students were with high schoolers. That did come up last year.
Chaperone's good.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous. So subcommittee updates.
Sure. So you're not going to believe it, but what you have in your packet for consideration for a first read is the last set of work that was done in August of 2023 on the policy manual. So this is all of the numbered policies and the requested or recommended action from policy. So you'll see that the bulk of them, almost every single one of them except 3 that are recodes, are rescinding because they were moved to the letter policies. They're part, it's footnoted that this takes the place of this. I think the goal was eventually for these numbers to be archived on the website. So when you log into the policy manual, it doesn't look like we have 2 student sections or 2 personnel sections. It's all the letter policies.
Can we high five across the table for?
It's not done yet. It's not done yet.
Okay, next meeting.
Can I ask when this is finalized, that it gets sent to Ginny Wendell?
No.
And
They're
Suzanne
gonna be
Stiles,
mad at me.
please? So can I get a motion to accept for a first read the rescind recode of number of policy sections?
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Katrina, seconded by Allison. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, it's unanimous. Long-range planning.
Long-range planning has not met yet, but we are planning to meet. But Allison has brought up a potential topic that she would like the long-range planning to take a look at, which is
That's a great
doing a
idea.
playground audit. And so Marshfield just recently underwent a playground audit of all of the playgrounds in the town. It wasn't a school-specific project. It was a town-wide effort where the company that they used was Real, R-E-A-L-E Associates, comes out and does an audit of your playgrounds, talks about useful life of equipment, a replacement plan.
What's the cost?
It's expensive. I think it was $16,000 for the playgrounds in Marshfield. There was 5, I think, that they looked at. So obviously we'd only be asking them to look at 3 of them. It's not the audit that I am concerned about, it's the recommendation. So playground equipment is extremely expensive. So it is great to have someone come out and say that you should replace these monkey bars or that slide. A slide can range anywhere from $12,000 to $28,000. So I just wanted to float that out there as an idea. If that's something that the committee would like long-range planning to take a look at, I know that Allison is passionate about it.
Yep.
What's the purpose of the audit? It might be a silly question, but
I think to make recommendations for improvements in the hopes that we would be able to go to the town and access some community preservation funds for those improvements on the playground.
okay.
I don't think that's a bad idea.
We haven't done anything, right? So
I
the playgrounds
don't.
were,
the only thing I would say is if we identify a hazard,
Yeah.
right, so that's why it's
state usually says you knew or should have known the slide was gonna tip over or the
Right,
monkey
so
bar was gonna break.
That's
and
why
we
it's
now
an
put
audit
ourselves
and
out
not
there.
an inspection. We're not asking them to inspect the playgrounds. We have realistically anywhere from 8 to 12 serious playground accidents each school year across the 3 elementary schools. Obviously not necessarily due to faulty equipment, but just kids being
In
kids,
general,
jumping
yeah.
down, sliding, whatever. I think it's a worthy thing to look at. I just want you all to be prepared for what the dollar figure is for the playgrounds. We have not done anything globally to playgrounds since the buildings were renovated and remodeled in 1999. So
How much is the audit?
16,000.
The audit is 16,000.
And
16, one
Sorry.
six.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Patty, if it was 6-0, we wouldn't be doing an audit. I'm telling you that right now.
And
Unless
so-
you can do it cheaper.
Wow. I know you
you're
can.
hired, just kidding.
I do.
Yeah,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I think just walk around the playgrounds. And it's a risk I'm not willing to sit with, I guess. And unfortunately, it costs a lot of money. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those tricky situations, but I think anybody if they haven't been looked at since '99, I think.
They've been inspected since '99. I want
When
to
was the last
clarify
time they were
that.
inspected?
They were inspected in 2012, I think.
Yeah, that's still too
Every
long.
year, as part of our insurance, re-upping of the town insurance, we do have to meet a minimum safety standard with the playground mulch and drainage and that kind of stuff. That's part of the town insurance, the casualty and liability insurance coverage.
Would part of the audit be also checking for being up to code with accessibility for kids with disabilities?
Yes.
Okay.
And so to David's point, he had just mentioned, like, once we know, like, so you're sure that doing an audit will not, like,
If something is
Place no
egregious, they're
liability.
gonna recommend you close the playground, right?
yeah.
It-
And so I guess the question is, for purposes of, I mean, we would clearly need to know, obviously, if it's dangerous. I guess that's the other piece of the argument.
Right, you'd also have to budget for the audit. We don't have $16,000. So maybe it's something you go to CPC in the spring and ask them to fund the audit.
So there's a couple of things here. I do think this is a great thing to ask CPC to fund. I do. I think David raises a spot on point in that, make no mistake, when the audit is done and the report comes back, recommendations, call it whatever you want to call it, it increments the liability of the district. There is no doubt about it. In a lawsuit, it would be used against the district in no time, and it is a public record because we will discuss it here and as part of the budget presentation. So it absolutely does that. The flip side to that, though, is we have playgrounds that haven't had a whole lot done to them in 25 years, and it is incumbent on us. I just talked about student safety, right, and keeping kids safe. The only way to plan for this, right, is to find out what it is we need to plan for. And then we've got to start ultimately figuring it out and planning for it. And part of it may be additional CPC funding. And I've seen CPC requests be pretty large requests, right? I think some of it is potentially capital purchases and in bondable types of things that may need to be done. But there are ways to kind of get around that. The reality, though, is the audit's going to come back, and this is going to be something that is a multi-year event. This isn't going to be like, oh, we have 14 pages of recommendations, let's do them all, it's $3 million, no problem, right? Like that's not going to happen.
Is there a way for us to also be in communication with the select board and advisory committee about this?
Right, I think your first step is for long-range planning to put a proposal
I
together for
totally agree.
CPC for
I
the funding for
agree.
the audit, which is.
And does that only happen at town meeting?
Yes.
So
This is where this is where I think the town has had the history a long time ago of just, kicking the can down the road. I realize that we just don't have $16,000 to just do this, but I think the risk is too high given the age and the reality of the playgrounds. And so, but I understand if we don't have the money, we don't have the money.
But
So
the reality,
that shouldn't stop safety, I guess, is
I
what
mean, the reality is kids are playing at recess every day
Yep.
on the playground.
Yep.
There's not,
look, and I'm not being flip, but if it's waited 25 years, waiting 8 months in order to get funding, to actually get the data, to get the information, what we're not doing is kicking it down the road. Actually, what we're saying is, we're going to put a plan in place and figure out how to do this,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it's either that or like if we don't get the funds or, like how do you?
Well, then we're in our budget cycle and, I mean, part of what we may need to do is have that conversation too.
Yeah.
And look, I would also argue, and I'm going to do it because I have so many of you captive out there, this is important, right? The fact that we are spending $16,000 tells you how tight this budget is. It tells you what fiscal year 26 is going to look like. The reality is our budgets with state aid increases and everything else goes up about 1.2 to 1.75% when you take a historical average. You all go to the grocery store, you all know what inflation is, you all know what the cost of things are, right? So that's why we are constantly in cut mode. And the fact that we can't just say, yes, it's $16,000, because my reaction would be, you have a $32 million budget, what is the problem? This is insane. But it is that tight. Like, that is how much everything is spoken for. And I just need to be really clear, because I would think that if I didn't know any better. I do think actually putting it forward, getting on CPC, I would be shocked if something like this did not pass.
they've won.
Right? I would be shocked, right? And that way then we have the data, right? And like I said, and then what do we attack? And to your point, right, it's about what's the most egregious, what's the biggest issue, what is the highest safety issue? And you start doing them and chipping away at it.
Well, I think too, Barry, not to interrupt, is, you know, when you go to town meeting, you want to see this passion. You want to get up there. And
Yeah.
again, I don't know any person that's going to argue about, you know, safety of a
anybody
kid.
yeah.
You know, I can't imagine anyone's going to stand up in that room and say, nope, I'm against, you know, let the kids get hurt, let them break their arm. It's just,
Yeah.
you'd be tarred and feathered probably.
Kevlar
So
for a cop.
I think it's, unfortunately, yeah, it's 6 to 8 months away, but I would think we could get that funding hands down.
Does the audit include a replacement costs estimates?
No.
So that would then be an additional,
That
so
would
that's
be
where
what
I'm
we
wondering,
have
like,
to-
how many steps is it, like, okay, so like we go through the process, and this is just, I understand this will be, but we go through the process, they make their recommendations, and then do we have to wait another year to go back for more funds to then do the
No, you
recommendations?
No,
probably
you would go in the fall.
If they have one, I mean, we're not
What-
having one this fall, so then it's a matter of, we have to wait to get the funds to find out cost, or are estimates
Well, so
free?
there's a couple of things that could be done.
Right,
So
there's several equipment companies on state contract that we can get costs from quickly. That's not
Okay.
a lengthy process.
And then it would,
But hold on, so there's a couple of things that can be done. There's no way my guess is this number's gonna be a big number.
oh, yeah.
It could easily be a 7-digit number when everything is all added up. I don't know that because I haven't seen anything, but wouldn't surprise me. I think the idea here is this. In the course of the budget process, I think we inform the town manager that there will be a capital item for playground equipment with a dollar value. We don't yet know what it is because we are going to get the data to figure out what it is. So that is one way to be proactive and to get out in front of it, right? The other issue is, ironically, the spring is a perfect time to do it because you have the funds. It can be done over the summer. The report can be compiled over the summer, and then we can literally start taking the report throughout next school year and begin to make adjustments, whether it be using the capital items, and then if we can go in the fall for CPC funding, we can do that. It is traditional in the spring, but I've seen it be in both, and then go again in the spring.
So playing devil's advocate, if we if we ask for $16,000 to do an audit that we're pretty sure we know what it's going to say, is it better worth our time and energy to instead go for replacement costs of the 3 30-year-old playgrounds? And say,
Oh, as far as saying this
yeah,
is what
so
it
it's
would
to
cost?
skip the audit, save the 16 grand, put it towards these $1 million slides.
I'm gonna
gold
say-
slides made out of platinum and gold.
That actually is.
And so I'm just wondering, should we, if in what long, I don't know who's on long range, whoever's on long range, can they
We can
investigate
explore the options.
the option of bypassing
Yeah.
that and going right towards replacement of the 3 over the course of, I mean, I think people. can
I
vote.
would say a little
I don't
bit
know.
respectfully, I'm sorry, Katrina, I don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. You know, the thing is, we sit and say, well, okay, we think we need a new slide. I'm not a professional, I'm not a builder, I'm not a contractor. You know, my thought is if we spend the 16, I think maybe we go before town meeting and talk to some of the contractors that maybe Aaron mentioned, say a slide will cost hypothetically $10,000.
Yeah.
A new seesaw costs $5,000. Now we have some costs in mind.
Yeah.
So maybe when we go forward and ask for the 16 for the audit, let's say hypothetically we need 100,000, another.
Yeah.
Maybe we ask for that 100,000 then and fix the immediate
Well, and
problems.
so here's where it comes down to, like, Hobmock currently has, well, last I saw, a whole slide's not even there. Like,
Right.
it's just taped off kind of thing. And so that is it was, I can't say current situation, but like, to me, an audit's gonna come and be like, well, there needs to be a slide there.
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's something
Or-
we could self-identify, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know, but the other fear I would have, and Patrick or Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, if this audit comes back and says, oh my God, you've got a major issue here,
We close the
Lisa,
playground.
We have to
Board of
close-
Health is
Just close the
closing.
playground, that's
And then what do
exactly
we do
right.
with 200 or 400 kids on recess time?
100%.
Because we can't let them play, and then let them better play in a parking lot, fall in the concrete. But,
Yeah.
if we identify real nasty hazards, I think, my opinion would be, yeah, we do have to close it. It's
No, I think we,
kind of
yeah.
devil you know versus the devil you don't know.
But if I can tell you right now, my experience has been going before, whether it be town meeting or as the town manager is getting ready to bond, and as a result, then going before the selectmen and explaining, we want $500,000, right, to redo the 3 playgrounds. They're gonna be like, show me. I'm gonna be like, well, go walk it, like you can see it. What the audit does is it gives you the data. It gives you an unbiased viewpoint. The other thing too, by the way, maybe we'll have, if we have a capital item that's extensive, when you go to town meeting and you say to people, we had an independent audit done, this is what it is. Folks, all of a sudden, you're coming with data. It's not anecdotal. It's not a gut feeling. It's fact, right? I think we're gonna have a way better shot at getting the funding to get to where you want to, albeit it may take a few months longer. There is no doubt, David, right? If candidly, if one of the playgrounds is that dangerous, then you're right, the health agent is gonna shut the playground down, and we'll have to deal with that for a couple of months. I mean, that's where we are.
But at some point, you do have to address it. I mean, 25-year-old playground.
I agree.
One question I had was like, what is I don't know if we have like a shelf life or what it was when it was built, like what the estimated.
The wear and tear on those things with the number of kids that are in and out of them, the number
Right,
of
it's a
community
function of
members,
the
it's a
weather
lot.
too. Yeah.
Cold winter, they're plastic. They're
Yeah.
not. So I think that when they were first installed in 1999, I'm sure that you were given a 20 to 25 year useful life.
Right, right.
That would be
So
my
it's-
guess. So we're at the end of it.
Okay.
That doesn't, for those familiar with this group, the useful life of the turf was 10 years and we made it last 16, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not the be all end all, but we are at the point where
Okay.
the conversation
That's
needs to
helpful to
happen.
know.
I would argue we're probably beyond the useful life on most of it, right?
Yeah.
For some pieces of it, I
yeah.
would think, yeah.
So I think it's a
Sounds
good
like a
thing to
great
do.
topic for
I
long-range
think
planning.
long-range
Do we have,
planning will
is it
take
four,
it.
how many is it 4 playgrounds? Is North considered 2 or is that still 1 playground? Like how would you,
It's one place.
just 1 playground? Okay.
So long-range planning can take this, start to think about the application. May even want to get on the CPC committee's sort of agenda.
Yep.
To let them know it's coming. But yeah. Okay, future meeting dates and topics.
So you guys are meeting on October 22nd. I do just want to let you know that PAC TV will not be recording that evening. There's a scheduling conflict. We have rescheduled that meeting a couple of times now, so I wouldn't recommend that you reschedule it. But traditional minutes will be available following the meeting,
Fine.
as was the case for the past 15 years that we met without PAC TV.
No offense, guys.
That night, I would anticipate, obviously, there's a executive session with Joe at the beginning. Mary Beth will be sharing the achievement report. Any slides that are presented that night would be automatically put on the website so that folks can work through them.
So is that a 6 o'clock start?
6:30.
Executive session would start at 6:30,
Yes.
Yes.
so like a 7 o'clock.
I think I'm going to give you a 7:30 start,
Wow, okay.
just because I don't want to rush the.
That's fine.
You only have one meeting on your calendar for November. That's 11/19. 11/5 is election day. I do think you should add a second November meeting.
Yeah, Aaron and I talked about this. There's a lot going on. I would respectfully ask that we don't meet on election day. There's a lot happening. I want to make sure as many people get out to vote as they possibly can. Please remember the school funding thing when you go out to vote. I think, we could do 11/6, we could do 11/7 that week, or we could do,
That's the start of
That's
the
the
conference.
conference
Yeah,
week.
the 6th,
I'll be there.
6th,
Yeah,
we won't be
maybe
here.
the next, yeah, I know. We'll all be gone. Well,
so then.
You're welcome.
So why don't we plan on doing the 12th and the 19th? I know it's back to back, but you then get into Thanksgiving week, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we'll do the 12th and the 19th. I know they're back-to-back weeks, but I think there's just enough happening and enough going on that it's going to be important for us to be able to get together.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Would that be
And
at the
that's-
6:30?
So
6:30.
that says the day after Veterans Day, yeah, okay.
And the same for 11:19.
Yes,
And sorry, what time do you say?
6:30.
For both of them?
Yes. Okay. Any other topics that you guys want raised in upcoming meetings?
One thing I was thinking about for, well, this is actually for long-range planning, but just to think about like the, similar, we've had conversations about making sure that there are opportunities for less senior school committee members to learn from more senior school committee members around things like budget and all of that. So just coming up with a plan for that so that we're intentional about how we use our time, and there can be some mentorship or something, which will happen, but I think if we include it in long-range planning, it would be helpful.
Sure. All right.
Who's on long range?
I think it's Sue and Katrina.
Oh, wait, no, I'm not.
No, I think it's David.
Oh, is it Sue and David?
Yeah, I'm on
Oh,
policy.
all right. I stand corrected. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think it's absolutely a good idea. Okay, so I need a motion to enter executive session pursuant to Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to discuss a personnel services contract as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the legal position of the school committee as declared by the chair.
So moved.
So motion by David, seconded by Sue by roll call vote. Sue? Katrina? Allison?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So we are now in executive session.